I ask consent that after I speak for about 10 minutes, that the senator from California be recognized for up to 30 minutes, and following her, the senator from Oregon be recognized. Mr. Merkley.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I think the senator from Maine, the independent senator from Maine, probably said it best when he observed on the floor and in private conversation that if you took 4 or 5 of us and said, forget that you're elected to public office, here's a problem to solve, that we would have come up with about the solution that the President, the House of Representatives, and the bipartisan proposal today have come up with. This is a very good solution on a very big problem that affects millions of families and about 11 million students who are headed to college this year. The bipartisan proposal makes it cheaper, simpler, and fairer for students going to college. It makes their loans more certain because it locks in a rate for the life of the loan, whether it be 8, 10, 12, or 15 years. It takes it out of the political football game, which we play every other year, it seems, on student interest rates, and solves the problem permanently. It is based upon an idea recommended by President Obama, passed by the House of Representatives, and endorsed by the bipartisan group that's been working on it. I wish all of the major problems that came before us could be solved in this way. As far as cost goes, it's a big difference. About 2/3 of all the undergraduate loans, of all the loans that are made in the United States, and there are about, as I said, about 11 million students, will take out about 18 million loans because many students take out more than one loan. And for all of the undergraduates, about 2/3 of the loans, the cost of the loan will be cut about in half, which means that if you get a loan this year at a 3.86% rate, that's the rate that's locked in for the entire life of the loan. It's simpler and fairer because there's a single rate for all undergraduates. Beforehand, we'd had one rate for what we call the subsidized loan and another rate for the unsubsidized loan. That's confusing, and it was unfair, really, because 80% of the lower income students who had the subsidized loan also had the other loan. So now everybody who shows up at the University of Tennessee and borrows money, if they're undergraduates, all their loans are the same rate. It's fair to taxpayers because we asked the Congressional Budget Office, compute for us what it costs the government to borrow the money and administer the loan, take into account the costs, and let's try to make sure that we come as close to zero as possible with what we cost the taxpayers, and they've done that. And it's fair to students because we asked them to do the same thing for students. They said we're loaning more than $100 billion a year, $1 trillion over 10 years. So help us find a formula that comes as close to zero as practical so we don't overcharge students and make money on the backs of students. And they came within 0.7% in their estimates, which are only estimates, and for all practical purposes, that's a rounding error. That's a good faith effort to get to zero in terms of fair to taxpayers and fair to students. But I would want to say to those who suggest it's not fair to students, let's keep in mind a few things. Number one, thanks to Senator Harkin and many of the Democratic members of the Senate, there are caps on the loans. So if they go up too high, there's a limit on how high they can go. Second, there is, as has been mentioned, the income repayment plan, which means that under the existing law today, if you take out a student loan and then you get a job, you only have to pay back about 10% of your disposable income. Now, that's not all of your income. That's after you deduct your living expenses and your taxes, about 10% of what's left. And if that's not enough to pay it back over 10 or 20 years, depending on whether you have a public or private sector job, the government forgives it. So there's that cap on there as well. Then there's what we call the interest subsidy. About 40% of the loans are subsidized. They're for lower income students, which means that the government, the taxpayer, pays the interest while you're in college. So if you're a low-income student at the University of Tennessee and you take that loan out, the government will pay your interest the whole time you're in college. Then, in addition, there's the Pell Grant, and we spend $35 billion a year on taxpayer money on the Pell Grant, which goes to low-income students. So a student at the University of Tennessee might have a Pell Grant of up to about $5,000 or so, might have a Hope Scholarship from the state of another $3,000. The tuition at the University of Tennessee is about $8,000 or $9,000. At the community college, it's about $3,000 or $4,000. So you can see relatively, there's a lot of financial aid out there before you even get to these low-rate student loans that taxpayers are making available to 11 million students at a rate of 3.86% for undergraduates. Then there's one other aspect in which this is favorable to students, and that's the accounting system that we use. Now, I've heard some say that the government's making money on the backs of students, and let me try to put that in the simplest form that I can. All we're doing with the proposal we're making today is resetting the rates. Very simple bill with a few pages. And it's on top of a student loan system with a lot of cash going in and out of it. $100 billion going out this year to new loans, maybe about as much coming back in, being repaid from old loans. There are two ways of accounting for that cash flow back and forth, and whether it benefits the taxpayers or whether it benefits the students. Under the law, we have something called the Federal Credit Reform Act, which if you adopt that, would say, well, the taxpayers are benefiting to the tune of about $185 billion over 10 years. That's correct. That's exactly what it says. Not from what we're voting on tomorrow, but for the underlying system that already exists. But the Congressional Budget Office has said that's not the way they recommend measuring the way we count the cost to the government of loaning money like this. To be specific, the Congressional Budget Office says the Federal Credit Report Act estimates do not provide a comprehensive measure of what federal programs actually cost the government because they don't take into the market risk. CBO says that adopting a fair value approach would provide a more comprehensive way to measure the costs to the federal credit programs and would permit more level comparisons between those costs and the costs of other forms of federal assistance. And the Congressional Budget Office says we already use that fair value approach, which includes taking into account the market risk with such things as the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the Troubled Asset Relief Program. Those were the bailouts, as we called them in 2008. CBO uses those with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In other words, the nonpartisan group we rely on to advise us about money says that if we actually use the right accounting method, the current student loan system benefits students to the tune of about $95 billion over the next 10 years, not taxpayers. So there's another benefit to students. So it's not true that under the recommended form of evaluating the cost to the government that taxpayers come out better than students. One other thing I'd like to say, or two other things. One is I'd like to compliment those who've worked on this. My colleague, Senator Harkin, who's chairman of the Education Policy Committee here in the Senate, who argued forcefully for caps. I congratulate the president for including this idea in the budget and forcefully supporting it. I congratulate the House of Representatives. I suppose it's not lost on anyone. The president's a Democrat and the House is a Republican, and this is a bipartisan proposal. I like the sound of that. I think that shows that we can get results done when we keep our eye on the ball. And I especially compliment Senator Burr and Senator Coburn and Senator Manchin and Senator King and Senator Carper for working carefully on this, and Senator Durbin for his leadership in putting this together. It is true, as most speakers have said, we have a larger question before us. Do we need to make some changes in student loans? It's a lot of money. $100 billion a year? That's a lot of money. We need to make sure that it's available in the right way, that students aren't borrowing too much. And right now, if you're 20 years old and you show up at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville and you want $5,500, you get it. The university can't say to you, I'm sorry, Lamar, we don't think in your circumstances you're going to be able to pay that back in 10 years. I can say, give me my money. That's what the law says. Maybe we need to take a look at that. And we need to be careful about our facts. The Federal Reserve, for example, says that 70% of student loans today, where in the year 2012 in the fourth quarter, have a balance of less than $25,000. 70% of all student loans at the end of last year had a balance of less than $25,000. 40% had a balance of less than $10,000. Now, the trend is going in the wrong direction. Some students are borrowing too much money, but the average undergraduate loan is about $25,000. That's the average debt. And an undergraduate student can't really borrow more than $31,800, and that's 2/3 of the loans. So while there may be some problems with the student loan program, and I, for one, think some students borrow more than they should, we have 6,000 institutions out there, from Nashville Diesel College to Harvard to Notre Dame to University of Tennessee. We need to be careful that we understand exactly what the problem is, that we focus in on it. We don't apply a lot of mandates from Washington, that we work with the colleges and universities and find those universities like Tennessee Tech University, where they have very low level of student loans, to others where they may have loan rates that are too high, and make sure, yes, that students don't saddle themselves with too much. But when you have a 20-year-old in Knoxville showing up entitled to, say, $5,500 for a community college tuition that only costs $3,000, and he or she can put the other $2,500 in their pocket, and the community college can't say no, well, Mr. President, that's one reason many community colleges have just gotten out of the loan business, because they think that's wrong for the student. And if that's the case, then we in the Senate ought to look at that. Senator Harkin and I are committed to do that in the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, looking at student loans. But for today, if the Senate does what I hope it does, this is a victory for students. It makes loans cheaper, simpler, fairer, more certain. It stops this annual business of political football with student interest rates, gives students a low interest rate that they can lock in over time, a cap at the top, so that if rates spiral through the roof, student loans won't spiral through the roof. And it's done in the context of a larger system that includes Pell Grants and interest subsidies for low-income students, and that if it were based upon an accounting system that is recommended by the Congressional Budget Office, would tilt the whole program to the advantage of students to the tune of $95 billion additional dollars over the next 10 years. So I congratulate all of those who've worked on it, from the bipartisan sponsors to the Republican leadership in the House to the Democratic President of the United States. Hope we adopt it by a big vote. Hope the 11 million students going to college this fall have the advantage of planning their long-term futures with the lowest possible interest rate on those 18 million student loans they'll be taking out. I thank the President. I yield the floor.